Can a man truly be free if only his body is free? And can a man truly be enslaved if his mind refuses to surrender? More than 250 years ago, an ordinary Igbo boy would answer those questions. He owned nothing. He commanded no army. He wore no crown. One day, everything was taken from him: his home, his family, even his name. His hands were placed in chains, but something inside him remained untouchable. While others saw only a slave, he saw a student. While others accepted darkness, he searched for light, and with nothing more than a curious mind, an unbreakable spirit, and the courage to tell the truth, he wrote words that would help change the world. This is the unforgettable story of Olaudah Equiano Ilo, the African boy they chained but could never imprison.
Before we begin today's story, kindly subscribe and become part of this growing circle of African history, wisdom, culture, and Moonlight Tales. Sit close to the fire. The elders are about to continue their story.
Welcome to Moonlight Tales Africa, a place where African stories come alive beneath the moonlight. Sit close, relax, and journey with me. Sit close to the fire. The elders are about to speak. Because some stories do more than entertain us, they help us understand ourselves. This is Moonlight Tales Africa. The boy they could not break, long before his words shook an empire, before kings, politicians, and ordinary people listened to his story. There was simply a little Igbo boy. His name was Olaudah Equiano. He was born in an Igbo community in what is now southeastern Nigeria, where life was rich with tradition, honor, and family. Every morning, the village awoke to the sound of pounding yam, children laughing, and elders preparing for another day. At night, families gathered beneath the moonlight to tell stories. It was there that young Olaudah first learned that wisdom was more valuable than riches. Unlike many children his age, Olaudah was endlessly curious. He wanted to know how everything worked. He listened carefully whenever the elders spoke. He watched craftsmen shape wood and iron with skilled hands. He asked questions that made grown men smile. One elderly storyteller once looked at the boy and said, "A child who keeps asking questions will one day see farther than everyone else." No one realized how true those words would become. Then, one ordinary day, everything changed. While many of the adults were working in the fields, armed kidnappers entered the village. Before Olaudah could understand what was happening, he and his younger sister were seized. They screamed for their parents. They held tightly to each other, but the captors were stronger. For a short while, brother and sister remained together. They comforted one another. They whispered that everything would be all right. Then came the moment that would remain in Olaudah's heart for the rest of his life. They were torn apart. His little sister disappeared in one direction. He was dragged in another. That was the last time he ever saw her. As he was marched from village to village, one thought refused to leave his mind. Why? Why were people doing this? Where were they taking him? Would he ever see home again? Most people would have been consumed only by fear. Olaudah had fear, but he also had curiosity. Even in the darkest moments, his mind kept searching for answers. Days later, he saw something he had never imagined could exist: an endless body of water, and floating upon it, a gigantic wooden ship. As he stepped on board, he heard chains clatter against the deck. He saw frightened faces from many different African nations, different languages, different cultures. One terrible fate. That day, they placed iron around his body, but they failed to notice something. His greatest strength had never been in his hands. It was in his mind. They could chain his wrists, but they could not chain his curiosity. And that curiosity would become the key that unlocked his future. The great ship carried Olaudah across an ocean he never knew existed. Each sunrise reminded him how far he had been taken from home. Each sunset deepened the ache of losing everything he loved. Yet even in that darkness, his mind refused to stop learning. He watched everything. He listened to every unfamiliar word. He observed how the sailors worked together. He studied the strange customs of the people around him. He realized that those who could read and write possessed something invisible, a kind of power. Words opened doors. Knowledge commanded respect. And for the first time, Olaudah understood that although his body belonged to another man, his mind still belonged to him. Whenever an opportunity appeared, he seized it. He learned the alphabet. Letter by letter, word by word, sentence by sentence. Books became his teachers. Every page he read loosened another invisible chain. Every new word reminded him that no one could imprison a determined mind. His owners expected him to obey. Instead, he grew. His honesty, intelligence, and discipline earned him responsibilities few enslaved people were given. He traveled aboard trading ships. He learned navigation. He handled business with remarkable skill. People began to trust the young African whose wisdom far exceeded his years. But there was one dream he never surrendered: freedom. Whenever he earned even the smallest payment, he refused to waste it. One coin, then another, then another. Each coin was more than money. It was a step toward reclaiming his life. Years passed. The small pile grew larger, until one unforgettable day, Olaudah stood before his master with the savings he had worked so patiently to earn. At just 21 years old, he purchased his own freedom. No army rescued him. No king paid his ransom. His determination had accomplished what chains could not prevent. At last his body was free, but something remarkable had happened. Long before that day, his mind had already broken free. Olaudah now understood that freedom was more than the absence of chains. True freedom was the ability to think, to learn, to choose, and to speak the truth without fear. He could have walked away and lived only for himself. Instead, he made a decision that would change history. He would tell the world what he had seen. He would become the voice of millions who never had the chance to speak, the voice that broke the chains. Years passed. The frightened little boy who had crossed the Atlantic in chains had become a free man. But freedom did not erase memory. Some nights, when the world grew quiet, Olaudah could still hear the crashing waves. He could still see the slave ship disappearing into the mist. He could still remember the cries of those who never returned home. The chains had fallen from his body, but the memories remained. He knew that if the world forgot those voices, they would truly be lost forever. So Olaudah made a remarkable decision. He would not allow pain to have the final word. He picked up a quill and began to write, not for fame, not for wealth, but for every man, woman, and child whose story had been swallowed by the Atlantic Ocean. Every page carried a memory. Every sentence carried the weight of truth. Every chapter broke another link in the chain of silence. Then, in 1789, he published the interesting narrative of the life of Olaudah Equiano. It was far more than a book. It was the voice of an African telling his own story. For generations, others had spoken about Africa. Now Africa was speaking for itself. People were captivated. For the first time, thousands looked through the eyes of a young Igbo boy whose life had been torn apart by slavery. His book spread from hand to hand. It was read in homes, discussed in churches, debated in Britain's meeting halls. Even some of the most powerful men in the nation could no longer ignore the humanity of those they had enslaved. Soon his words crossed oceans. His testimony reached other nations. His courage strengthened the growing movement to end the slave trade. Olaudah had no throne. He commanded no army. He possessed no great fortune. Yet one man, armed only with truth, helped shake the conscience of an empire. He proved that sometimes the greatest weapon is not a sword, but a story honestly told. Centuries have passed, empires have risen and fallen. The slave ships have long disappeared from the sea, but Olaudah Equiano's voice still echoes across history. His life reminds us that knowledge can overcome ignorance, that courage can outlive cruelty, and that one determined mind can inspire generations. They chained his body, but they could never chain his mind. And once a mind is truly free, its light can help set the world free. So, whenever stories are told beneath the moonlight, remember the little Igbo boy who refused to let chains define his destiny. Because the greatest freedom is not found in our hands, it is found in our minds. The end.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, comment, and share so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.